Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And I am super excited about today's guest, George Sandmann. Hi, George.
Hey, how are you, Eddie? It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you too. And I was featured on your podcast, which was amazing. We had a great conversation.
We did.
You are a great host, great questions. And we met at the 40 Strategy Growth Conference in Arizona, hosted by Carl Cox, the one and the only that I interviewed for my podcast twice. And I believe I was the first guest ever on his podcast about 4 or 5 years ago. And then I did an reappearance, which was amazing. We recorded another episode. So thank you, Carl, for introducing us. George, I am so excited about our conversation because you're a wealth of knowledge and very inspirational. So I'm going to start with your bio, and then we're going to jump into the conversation. How's that?
Terrific. Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, good. So, George, you're the author of The Growth Driving Advisor, a Forbes published guide that equips professionals with proven strategies to help businesses generate predictable profits, growth, and transferable value. I mean, that's what people want, right, from their business. I mean, they want growth and they want it to be transferred. They want it to make sure that it's replicatable, right? I mean, it is success replicated. That's what we're all about. That's what you are all about. But we go from different angles and we totally complement everything that we do is definitely complements one another. So you're the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. You developed the strategic capacity framework and clarity, and it has a trademark. So it is specifically and originally developed by you.
Yep.
And it's a software platform, and it's tools that have empowered thousands of advisors to turn complex business challenges into actionable, measurable growth plans.
Yes.
Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, thank you. Well said.
Right? I mean, growing a business looks so complex and so many things that are involved there. And you got to simplify it so you can actually follow a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, you can't really, there is nothing to follow to get to your destination. It's all random. So we're going to talk about that. And your work bridges theory and execution, which is so important. And you enable CEOs and advisors alike to align strategic intent with scalable systems that drive equity value. It's all very much, value and result driven.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. So first of all, let's talk about you. So how did you arrive at the idea of creating this software? Where did you start? Let's hear about your journey first.
That's funny, Eddie, and I'll keep it brief because there are much more important things to talk about than me. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. I'm an attorney by training. I got pulled into my first startup. I jumped into my first startup, maybe is a better way to say it, in 1994. And it's been, it's just one thing led to another ever since. And about 15 years ago, I had just serendipity, right? I ended up meeting the CEO of a different software business that led me on this journey to where we are today, and I've worked with a lot of people on thousands and thousands and thousands of client cases. So imagine sitting at the middle of a spider's web of information where you're getting all of this, you're getting your data, right? From the software, and you're getting those human interactions that no AI cannot replace, and those interactions, those conversations, those cases, led me to invent the three dimensions of business growth. and the concept of strategic capacity. And there are really only two of us out in the entire world talking about strategic capacity. It is my very good friend, Dr. Patricia, who did her dissertation on strategic capacity, and she and I, Patricia Malone, she and I have a slightly different perspective on what it is, or we come at it from a slightly different angle. But strategic capacity is really the capacity of a business to execute against or towards the shareholders' intent. And I say invent, if I can take 2 secs, I say invent because, I think it's funny. I was having this conversation over the weekend. Somebody said, well, why are you an inventor? And I said, well, I think that's the best term because if we consider the paperclip, right, the humble paperclip, well, the person who invented the paperclip didn't invent wire. They didn't invent springs. They didn't invent, but and there are staples, there are bulldogs, there are a lot of different ways you can put a rock on paper and it'll hold them all together. But the paperclip is unique thinking, and it's a unique way to use basically spring grade steel wire. And once you get that, you can see why the way we talk about creating predictable profits and cash flow, predictable sustainable growth, and predictable transferable value, but as dimensions that are interrelated, is a net new way of looking at businesses. And the reason that you and I get along so well is it's a way to systematize growth, right? How do we systematize growth and systematize maximizing transferable value? So I'll get off my soapbox, but thanks
It's
for
beautiful.
asking.
Yes. So let's talk about strategic capacity and let's define strategic capacity.
Okay. Strategic capacity, it describes, so you need to step back. When I talk about strategic capacity, think of businesses don't exist in a vacuum, right? They exist in a market, and they ultimately, the marketplace for businesses is typically the private capital markets. Now they're the public markets, but there are only a few thousand public businesses. Let's look at the private capital markets. And let's consider the fact that private equity owns about a third, right, 35% and growing of pre-middle market and middle market businesses. And here I'm talking about businesses with 2.5 to 100 million in revenue, gross annual. And so what is strategic capacity? Well, the private capital markets have told us what the type of business they're looking for. And they're looking for a business that is highly likely to predictably and sustainably grow cash profits going into the future. And so if we understand that what is important to the markets is that the predictable and sustainable growth of free cash flow, then how do we describe that? And I shorthand that into strategic capacity. And strategic capacity can be seen through the lens of the three dimensions of growth, right? What do we need to do with a business? What are the actions we need to take, the processes we need to put in place to create predictable profits and cash flow, right? Because so often profits are stuck in the balance sheet. So predictable profits and cash flow. We then can turn our attention, once we understand our cash flow, we know how much we have to invest in growth. And then we can add the components of a system that now unleashes predictable, sustainable growth, right? If you're buying a business, if you're growing a business, and I'm going to make a point in a moment. If you're growing a business, sustainable growth is the name of the game, right? You want to at least be growing faster than as fast as inflation, right? With a little fudge. Cool. Then we need to think about predictable transferable value because the latent value of a business is one number, but more often than not, the vast majority of the time, not all of that value, or in some cases, any of that value is transferable, can be monetized by accessing, say it with me, the private capital markets. So it is that predictable transferable value, which is the ultimate measure of business success. So you asked a simple question. Strategic capacity measures a business that which can be measured, can be improved, It measures a business's ability to predictably and sustainably grow free cash flow. And the higher that predictability and sustainability, the higher the transferable value of the business.
Absolutely. So what are some of the parameters or some of the factors that contribute to that capacity, to a better score, a higher score?
Yeah, that is a great question. So the way I define the world, and none of this is, I'm going to go back to the analogy of the paperclip, right? We didn't invent wire. It is not an act of genius to say you need predictable cash flow, right? And I'm not saying that any of this is an act of genius, but it is what is net new? Well, what is net new is to say, okay, well, we are going to divide a business into distinct areas, dimensions. In each of those dimensions, we are going to define the objectives that need to be met in order to confidently say, predictably say, demonstrate that we have the systems to generate predictable profits and cash flow. There are eight, the way I define the world, there are eight objectives in each of the three dimensions. And we need to step back and think of a business. There's a reason that there's a Formula One car on the wall behind me. We need to think of a business as an engine. And best in class engines deliver best in class results. Too often we think about businesses from the perspective of financial results. What are their gross revenues? What are their profits? How fast are they growing? That's great. Those are results. That is history. That is not actionable data. When we think about the business as an engine and the fact and the way we describe it, that there are 24 gears, if you will, inside that business engine, we need to understand the health of each of those gears, but also the ability of those gears to mesh together. And these are processes, right? The ability of those processes to mesh together in a way that will predictably and sustainably deliver results.
Right.
So that's it in a nutshell. And if you'd like some examples,
I would love to dive into it. I just wanted to say, George, you definitely mention it, predictable results, predictable, sustainable results. And that is something that I feel entrepreneurs really need, because it takes the guesswork out of success. If you follow the formula, you will get to success. You will be successful.
Yeah, and that is proven. The data is in. When you do these things, whether you use a system like the growth drive system, or you some other, as long as you systematize it, and that goes to adding to the fantastic work you do with systems, with process engineering. And you can process engineer, ladies and gentlemen, remember, if you call Adi, and you should, she can help you engineer more productive meetings, right? Something as simple as a meeting. But how many of our meetings do not maximize the effectiveness of the time we invest? I'll say it to be polite. I'll just keep it at polite. So, I'm sorry, Eddie. You're going to have to hit me with a question.
No, it is absolutely the right. I want to go back to our question. The question I just asked you, and I want to hear more examples. But I just thought of another question that I want to interject before that is like,
Please.
do you feel like there's anything that should be left to chance or not make it predictable or systematized?
Well, there's, the market has a vote. So to the extent that we cannot control the market, we can see them. So I think of the market as the ocean, right? Mm-hmm. And the ocean is neither kind nor evil. The ocean can float your ship. I'm a sailor. The ocean can provide food. The ocean can also, without a second thought, drown you. Right? It is much more dangerous than any desert. I do some fun stuff. The ocean is much more dangerous than any desert in which we may find ourselves. So if we think of the markets as the ocean, neither good nor evil, simply a thing, an entity.
Yeah.
Then we can start understanding that the ocean is beyond our control, right? And it's a great analogy because we can build berms to hold it back. We can build seawalls. There's a lot we can do, but we are not controlling the ocean, and you are not controlling the market and the vagaries of the market. And I don't know what you went through in any of the dot-com bubble bursts or in 2008. I have had good fortune and bad. And 2008 was particularly brutal for me personally. But so The short answer in my book, I say that every business has the opportunity, every business has the can have the good fortune to be a great business. But it is intentional work, and that goes. You'll hear me use the word intent because goals are great, but do you intend to deliver that goal? And have you really narrowly defined your intent? Because intent is you have qualified yourself, and you have defined where you want to go, and you have said, heck yes, I'm going to get there. Now, how do we get? And intent has all sorts of colors. So, yes, there are things that are beyond our control, but within the business, there is very little that we can't design and then execute the design, right? Plan and then execute the plan. So the
Yeah, and I
long-winded
think
answer.
to
That was a
that
simple
point,
question, but
no, but it is very true because you can also become too rigid with systems because you can stick to the system
oh yeah.
without looking at what is actually happening in the market. So for your analogy as a sailor, you can stick to your plan and then all of a sudden there is a storm and you don't change your plan or you don't adapt, you don't adapt the environment and the systems to actually align with what is happening. That's when systems become dangerous. That's when they become outdated. That's when you stop using them.
They cannot be rigid. And you see me looking, I'm looking over at my bookshelf. Adi, 100%, one must be dynamic, but there's dynamic within. That is why a statement of vision and mission is so important. And with those, defining guiding principles or core values that will that are, think of those as the bumpers for our behaviors. And I'm looking over here at my bookshelf because as part of we have a certification. It's a certification in the three dimensions of business growth. It's not certification in software. It's certification in a methodology and a process. And the books that we send to students often surprise them. One of them is written by General Mattis. He is General Mattis, former Secretary of Defense, now would be called Secretary of War. And he talks about commander's intent and the incredible power of commander's intent. And frankly, what you're seeing play out on the battlefield in Ukraine right now, what you see play out on the battlefield in the Middle East right now, you have militaries that believe that by communicating intent and providing guiding principles, we can win on the battlefield. And when you put that up against a much more rigid structure like the Russian military command doctrine, which is very, very rigid, very top down, defining intent and communicating guiding principles gives us the tools that we need to be dynamic. And I'll finish it on this point. Businesses that have a top-down autocratic leader will never outperform over the long run businesses that have a dynamic. In fact, autocracy is not leadership. It is dictatorship.
Right.
A dynamic leader, someone who leads by example, leads by ideas, leads by work ethic, that is a different animal. And that business will, in my opinion and my experience, always outcompete the more rigidly structured businesses. So the name of the game is to put processes in place. And Addy, man, one of the you saw me freak out at the back of the room when you were giving your talk at the growth conference when you said process is not process prevents chaos, but process also, there's a saying, discipline equals freedom. And that is so, so true when we talk about processes inside a business. It is. So I'll stop there because I'd love to say, hey,
No, it's
Addy,
so true.
what
And
do you say
and
about
when you check the word discipline, discipline comes from the word disciple, right? It's a student. It's when you study, you can apply discipline, which means like self-control or abiding by guided by rules, specific
Yes.
rules, right? It's controlled rules. It's not necessarily punishing, but it is something. If you have discipline, then it also goes together with the intent. You can actually execute the intent because if you intend to do something, but then you want to execute it, you have to have the discipline to do that. And the way to do it is systems. So
Yes.
I'm completely in agreement. Okay, so let's go back to the capacity, to the growth, to the strategic capacity framework.
Sure.
What are the different components of it?
So there are 24 components, and I won't rattle them off the top of my head. I won't embarrass myself by not getting them all right. But if we think about the first dimension of growth, what if you wanted a business that is going to, I'm going to take one step back. Here's a
Yeah.
preamble. The three dimensions of growth came to me by studying data, right? I'm a research freak. I'm a data freak. Um, there's no good news or bad news, only data. Now, when we had used a previous type of software that's no longer on the market to analyze over 50,000 that was used by over 50,000 CEOs. And one of the in the beginning of that software, they were offered six choices. Why are you here's? Three of those why are you here's were completely ignored. The other three were answered in this percentage. 62% checked. This is 50,000. This is statistically very significant. 62% said they wanted to grow their business. 21% said they want to make their business easier to run. And 17% were using the software because they were preparing to sell their business. By the way, of that 17%, 83% could not generate sufficient value to fund their wealth and legacy goals. Let's put that aside. 62, 21, 17. The way that plays out in the three dimensions of growth is dimension one is predictable profits and cash flow. That is making the business easier to run, right? If you have a business that can predictably, that is not a business that's necessarily growing, but that it is easier to run. You are not staring at the ceiling wondering how the heck you're going to make payroll.
Right.
The second dimension is that 62% predictable, sustainable growth. However, to grow a business, you will burn cash. So you would better have a firm grip, understanding, prediction of how much cash you're going to need to grow the business. And there is such a thing, I've done it, as growing a business faster than its cash flow can afford, and therefore hitting a wall. And those walls can be very unpleasant. Again, you'll be staring at the ceiling, wondering how you're going to make payroll.
Like, what would be an example of that when a business starts growing faster than the cash flow?
So you're taking an order. So just keep this real easy. Take a manufacturing company. You're taking orders, and you're taking orders like crazy, and you're getting partial payment on those or full payment on those orders. And, and this is where business models become important. But let's just say you're taking partial payment on the order, and that's sufficient payment. One would think, one would hope, to be able to pay for whatever it is we're going to deliver to the customer. Great. Well, as your orders increase, as your order taking accelerates, you're putting strain on your operations to be able to generate, to manufacture the parts, assemble the parts, package the parts, ship the parts, and deliver the parts in a way delivering on time and to spec. And that's part of our methodology. We'll talk about it in a sec. Well, as you're starting to tie up capital and inventory, right? Because now it's gone from your P&L, it's showing up as a P, profit, but it is tied up in inventory. So your inventory is gobbling cash. And if you cannot grow your way out of that problem. You actually reach a point where the problem becomes so severe that you can't sell your way out of it, because a lot of things happen when you're not delivering on time and or to spec. So businesses can grow faster than their cash flow, and there is this little thing called personal compensation or even greed, where the shareholders are able to take cash out of the business, and if they're harvesting cash from the business in a way that is chewing too deeply into operating capital, then they are compounding the problem. So I'm not going to, this is something we could talk about for the rest of the day. But that's how you do it.
Absolutely. And that's an area that you're expert at. And our listeners now listening and go like, yeah, that's what happened, or that's someone I'm afraid it's going to happen. But obviously there are solutions that you are
Yeah.
offering and helping them with. And that's where your software and also your coaching and your
Yes.
mentoring comes into play.
Yeah. We just, Growth Drive helps business advisors like you with with tools and knowledge to help them be more effective with their clients. Our vision at Growth Drive is to help $1 trillion of private businesses increase strategic capacity in the three dimensions of business growth. And I won't go down that rabbit hole. But,
George,
you know,
first of all, that's amazing. That's such a great goal. But
thank
let's
you.
go back because you and I can talk about everything all day long, but we have to, I mean, our listeners are very much, I'm sure, want to hear about the three dimensions. So we talk about the two dimensions. Let's talk about the third one.
So we talked about predictable profits and cash flow and predictable sustainable growth. And then there's predictable transferable value. And I'd make a very simple point. If you own a business or are helping lead a business and you are saying, well, I don't really care about transferable value, that's very totally cool. I get it. And maybe you want to hold on to your business for the long term. Terrific. I would point out that one day you're going to leave because the Grim Reaper is coming. But imagine if you could not exit the business by selling it, but you could start exiting the accountabilities chart, right? And you can start delegating with accountability some of the things you do that you really would prefer not to do.
Right.
And you could start doing the parts of your job that you love. Or maybe you're only coming to work once a month to collect, to feel the pulse and grab a check. Imagine if you retain all of the everything that is great about owning a business. It is tax advantaged. It is great for our egos. It is deeply satisfying. It is typically work when we get rid of the stuff that we don't like doing, it becomes work that we love. Imagine doing the work that you love and continuing to harvest cash, your compensation out of the business without giving up ownership. You can do that. This can be done. You simply need to redesign the business and act. You have got to take action. And I'm always say, take action today, any small thing. So, when I talk about predictable transferable value, when you create that is something that Carl and I call an oil well. When you have an oil well, that nodding donkey that's pumping out capital and you're putting it into your Charles Schwab account, Edward Jones, UBS, I'm not, I have no favorites, although Morgan Stanley, um, Raymond James, there's a lot of great players out there, Mass Mutual, Northwestern Mutual Life. I don't care where you're putting your cash. When you create an oil well, you retain all of the other exit options. Because the business is no longer dependent on you for its life. The business has become immortal. And the business is demonstrating, which is very important to the private capital markets, that it can go on to greater glory without you. It's counterintuitive for founders. You need the business. You need to become irrelevant to the future growth of the business. Now
You have to for different reasons, even
yeah.
if if somebody says, well, I don't want a transferable business, I think it's more communicating, I don't know how to get there.
Or I
And
don't want to
I've
sell the
tried many,
business. Great. Don't. Or I don't want to sell the business.
yeah, but I think it's more like I've tried it many times and it didn't work, so now I'm saying I don't want it. But because you painted the picture correctly, maybe you don't want to sell the business, fine. But if something happens, it's better. You want to be out of the business. And I also served many entrepreneurs, and what they want, what do they like most about being a business owner is the freedom. You can't get the freedom if
Yes.
you can't get yourself out of the business. And that's why also we do what we do is in order to empower owners, founders to have the
Sure.
freedom that they want. You give them the three-dimensional tool here so they can grow, they can definitely have the cash flow, and also being the business can be transferable, whether potentially transferable or actually actionable, that you're going to transfer it both ways works best to accomplish the three-dimensional. So how complicated or how simple is the software?
Well, so it is very intuitive. And the
Mm-hmm.
important thing, I believe deeply in simplicity. It is much harder. Samuel Clemens, right? If I'd had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. We have written the shorter letter. I have invested 30 years with everything from a rank startup, a business plan under my arm, getting money from friends and family, to acquiring businesses, selling businesses, raising capital, to having public companies as our big strategic funder. I've had the insane good fortune of being in relatively simple and incredibly complex organizations. Great. Now, what do you need to do? How are we going to do this? And Addie, would it be helpful if I just describe, for example, the first dimension? Like what are the gears we need to
Yeah,
have?
go for it.
Now, the power of the software, and the software is simply a mechanical manifestation of the methodology and process that I describe in my book. And for $29, I think it's 24.99. By the way, I don't make I don't make money. And when you buy the book from Amazon, believe me, um, it is not a money maker for me, but it is a money maker for you. And if you're a business owner, read the book. It's written for advisors. There's good wisdom in there. Dimension one. Remember I said there are 8 growth driving objectives in each of the 3 dimensions, 24 growth drivers in total. And there, we talked earlier about the 25th dimension, which is the private capital markets. And what we need to remember always as we're writing strategic plans and executing those plans is that the market has a vote. And if we go from a bull market to a bear market, that is going to impact your ability to grow your business and monetize your business. Businesses with high strategic capacity, those are high quality businesses, and you'll understand in a moment. Those businesses are resilient. They will outperform in good times, but here's the little secret. They will also outperform in tough times because they have, Adi, the processes and procedures in place and the dynamic reactiveness, and they typically have their finger firmly on the pulse of the business so that they are predicting. They're not waiting to learn how they did. They know on a daily basis how they are doing in terms of strategic capacity and in terms of financial outputs. Great. Okay. So the software's it's incredibly easy and intuitive to use, and it's not expensive. I'm not here to sell software. Let's talk about the methodology. And let's focus. I think it'd be helpful if we focus on dimension 1, predictable profits and cash flow. Little secret, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, when you increase strategic capacity in the first dimension, predictable profits and cash flow, the data is in. Revenues will pop. If your revenues are not growing when you've done this work, even though that's not what you set out to do, then there's something else going on. The good news is you can say, holy Toledo, there is something else. I have missed something. So let's move from this soup, this voodoo of grow my business and work harder, and we're going to buy marketing and we're going to do leads and buy a machine. Stop. Because here's how I would recommend in an ideal world you approach this. The first thing is you create an effective senior leadership team so that the business can run smoothly in a reasonable absence. You should be able to take a 2-week vacation without monitoring day-to-day performance and without it having a negative impact on the business, right? And that 2 weeks can become 4 weeks, can become a sabbatical. Imagine. Okay, effective senior leadership. Well, what else went?
But that's also part of making the business transferable.
Yes, because we do not have owner dependence. The number one deal killer, owner dependence. The
Absolutely.
business is overly dependent on the founder. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have an effective senior leadership team and the business can run smoothly in the owner's absence. Great. What else do we care about? People. All businesses is groups of people executing processes that generates revenue, right? I didn't say profits, just revenue. Groups of people executing a process that generates revenue. So the next thing we need to, I would urge you to focus on is that your people are productive and loyal. You have an efficient workforce with low turnover. Now you're starting to, remember I said these are gears? Now we're not going to worry about culture for now, but now you're starting to create a culture, you're trying the Acme way. So effective senior leadership, people productive and loyal. What's the next thing we might want to do if we want to create predictable profits and cash flow? Well, how about we have customers? Let's get them to give us recurring revenue. And what systems, what might we do? What activities might we undertake to generate high recurring revenues? And then we're going to get into other, now we're starting to get somewhere. We're only 3 growth drivers in. And the business, if you're doing your work, the business can run more smoothly than it did before, and it can run more easily for you, the owner, and typically more easily for the senior leadership team. A little aside, these businesses with high strategic capacity are outperforming in terms of financial results. They are also easier to run. They are non-chaotic. And Addie, you've seen it. We've all been in chaotic situations, and it is incredibly stressful and unpleasant. So, predictable profits and cash flow. I'm sorry, high recurring revenues. And what else are we going to care about? We're going to care about a sales process, right? That's number four. It is a scalable sales process so that you're not at the mercy of your sales team. You understand how they do what they do and how they generate revenue. You have strong standard operating procedures to deliver on time and to spec. Sales is making a promise to the market. Let's deliver on time and to
100%.
spec.
100%.
You're getting good financial data. Now, financial data need not have a dollar sign in front of it. You're getting good data out of the engine, and keep a scorecard. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you could do one thing, keep a scorecard and sit down with your senior team and review it every week, every Monday at 0900. This is what we're going to talk on. It's the
Hey,
same.
even every day is fine as well.
Oh, yes. I won't go down that rabbit. Yeah, daily is even better. Well, that's why the daily huddle is so powerful. Okay,
Right.
so now we have a sales process. We're getting good financial data out of the system. What else do we need to do? Well, we have high customer satisfaction, right? If we're doing what we do in a way that delights our customers. Now, hopefully, I can paint a picture of these gears working together. Sales is making promises to the market, operations is delivering on time and to spec, and customers are highly satisfied. All of our employees, transparency is your secret weapon, man. Transparency is, and I'm happy to talk about that for a moment. But so now everyone in the business understands people, productive and loyal, their role, and they understand how they can be successful in their role to deliver high customer satisfaction. Our satisfied customers are now buying again. They're evangelists. They're making the sales process easier. And you see how these gears start meshing together. Now, that's just 8 of the growth driving objectives. Imagine running a business with an effective senior leadership team where we have an efficient workforce with very low turnover. We've done the things it takes to make people happy to work for us, giving them dignity. We're generating high recurring revenues. We're getting good data out of the business. We have a great sales process. It's scalable. Can you see why? And we have rabidly happy customers. Can you see why that business revenues will pop? You cannot help it. And this is just predictable profits and cash flow. It's incredibly intuitive, and it is insanely powerful. Businesses that do these things, whether you use the growth drive methodology or not, businesses that act thrive. So that
Absolutely.
I sound like I am a disciple. I'm a disciple of success, man.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, George, when our listeners just heard what you had to say, that is incredible. And definitely, they probably want to know more. So if they want to find out more about your book, um, your software, how to work with you, how to work with the methodology, how can they find you?
So I said that, Addie, that thank you. So, and as I've said, I've said this publicly. I say it all the time. I give keynote speeches. This is part of what I say. Helping you is not dependent on doing business with us. If we are going to help $1 trillion of private businesses increase strategic capacity, then I can't also say as long as you pay us. That is not good for our national economy, and it's not good for anyone. To how? Well, I make myself incredibly available. My contact information is in my LinkedIn profile. You can Google me. My personal cell phone number is out in the world. Thank you, world, for not abusing that. Other than people looking for, I'm an independent voter in both New Hampshire and South Carolina. Believe me, my phone rings off the hook. But other than that, guys, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very easy to find. My book is available. It's The Growth Driving Advisor. I'm not here to flog books, but if you can get one kernel of wisdom for $30, then that is you're getting a tremendous ROI. This entire methodology and process is in the book. Cool. Well, in fact, if you look under the dust jacket, you'll see there's a QR code and you can get a bunch of free resources. I'm committed to your success is incredibly important to me. Our company's called Growth Drive. Google it. Google it, AI it, go into AI, go into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, hi, I run a professional services firm, a manufacturing business. I'm a dentist. It doesn't matter. This is industry agnostic. I want to grow my business. How might the Growth Drive methodology help me? How might Growth Drive help me? How might that crazy guy, George Sandmann, help me? And hit go, boop, and see what it comes up with. I am confident that it is going to give you some nugget. So just the key thing here, you need to understand where you are today. But at least as importantly, you need to understand where you want to be tomorrow. And once you understand and I'm talking about wealth and legacy for your family, your stakeholders, your community, that you think long and hard about that. Yes, we have a free tool to do that. It's powered by ChatGPT, actually. Once you think long and hard about how to do that, you need to understand your businesses to deliver that future intention. And that's where the software is very helpful, but you can do it manually, do it on the back of an envelope, well, an Excel spreadsheet. But take action. That is the one thing is if you keep doing what you're doing, you are limiting your own success. And think about your family. Think about your stakeholders, your employees, and think about what you would want for them. And now let's talk about understanding where the business is today, redesigning the business so that it can deliver your intent, and then take action and keep score. Guys, I know that sounds crazy simple, and it is actually that easy. That is why Gino's Vision Traction Organizer is such a fantastic, there's genius in simplicity right there. The VTO is genius in simplicity. I think if you use the VTO, if you happen to like that, a lot of you are using it out there, and you look at our methodology, suddenly you're going to have light bulbs, you're going to have strobe lights going off because we provide an actionable framework for moving your business forward, and it's proven. So, and if you want to do business with us, please do. I mean, that helps me help my family. So
100%, I agree with that. And I recommend that our listeners do that. Definitely read the book. Go right now and buy it. I mean, I'm sure you're curious to know what are the other drivers and then for the other two, and read about every one of them that you just described. I mean, George, you're a wealth of information.
Thank you very much.
And your purpose to help business is so strong that it just resonates. So thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. And this has been a fabulous conversation.
Thanks,
and
Eddie.
I'm sure you're going to be a recurring guest because we have so many questions, and I know our listeners would like to hear more. So stay tuned. You're going to be here again. But for now, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Thanks, Eddie. And thanks for out here talking to people about how important it is to have good processes and to execute them. Thank you. Really grateful.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.